Blog Talk Radio.
Radio. Please enter your host pin. When finished, press the pound.
To start your show now, press 1. To hear important
It appears that the host has already dialed into the show. Only one host is allowed per show. Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
Jillian, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, thank you so much. I do apologize for that little glitch. You know, internet radio has this very interesting ability, but you have to learn to master it. So as we continue to gain control of this platform, first let me tell you thank you so much for taking the time out of your Saturday afternoon, because I know that your schedule has been overwhelming. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Let me first do an introduction. I found so much information. I'm saying, well, where do I pull from this? So let me just start with jbullockenterprises.com. Such a beautiful, beautiful tribute to our history represented in your story and how you are portraying it through your work as a filmmaker. An award-winning writer, director, producer, actor, fight choreographer. Jillian Bullock, which takes me, I reflected right on the movie when I remembered this particular scene. Jillian Bullock is a Philadelphia-based award-winning filmmaker. She wears multiple hats, including screenwriter, director, producer, actor, fight choreographer, screenwriting instructor, and script consultant. Jillian graduated from LaSalle University with a BA in communications, which included several courses in screenwriting and all of the related subject matter. As someone who has taken several psychology and forensic courses in order to write thrillers and dramas to get inside the minds of characters, we will understand why you have to watch this movie. Jillian has sold 2 scripts in her career so far, Scar Across My Heart, The Champion Inside. She has also written additional scripts that she has directed in various stages of production or is looking to sell. Please join me in welcoming Jillian Bullock, writer, screenwriter, and all of the above, who does outstanding work from her position. And we want to support her, but certainly we want to talk about today her movie, A Sense of Purpose, Fighting for Your Life, which we know crosses so many of our national issues, whether it is specific to military or universities, but military sexual trauma is somewhat the overall message and how she tells this story. Jillian, can I just get you to take a minute to share from your perspective as to what inspired you to write movie? What inspired you? And you can introduce this movie in any way that you feel appropriate for this platform.
Okay. Like you said, a sense of purpose, fighting for our lives. It's about military veterans, PTSD, and military sexual assault. And it came up with the idea about 5 years ago when I was watching this TV program about veterans who came home and they had a hard time assimilating back into society once they came home. And they used MMA, mixed martial arts, as a way to help them cope. And I found a school in San Diego where the instructor and all the people that went there, men and women, were veterans, and they all trained in MMA. I said, that sounds like a cool story because I train in mixed martial arts. So I said, that'd be really up my alley, and I'm a veteran. So once I started interviewing veterans and about their story and everything, I found out that a lot of them had PTSD because they had been sexually assaulted while they were in the military. I said, well, that's an even deeper story. So I rewrote the script and I added that element into the storyline.
That is amazing. I mean, you've taken so many areas of your own personal life and experience, and you've filtered it through this amazing Asian medium of messaging. Can I ask you, what is it that motivates you to take on such a huge platform? What is your overall message that you would like for the audience to hear? What is the message that's coming from you that you would like to share? What is your message?
Well, as a writer, I used to be a reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Then I went into screenwriting, and I'm an author as well. And I always wanted to write stories that touched on tough subjects that the public just doesn't want to really deal with. But there is out there. So whether it's mental health or abuse or, homelessness, teenage pregnancy, drug addiction, these are realities. And in fact, a lot of the things I have gone through myself as I was growing up. I was homeless on the streets when I was 15, got involved in, drugs and prostitution to survive. So I understand basically who some people might call the underdog or the people who slip through the cracks that society doesn't want to discuss. I kind of relate to these type of people, which means it's easier for me to write those type of characters. And I want people to see that these people are human too. They have dreams, they have hopes, but they have some issues that happen in their life. And if no one gives them a helping hand, they're going to continue to fall through the cracks. And I want people to understand that. This is why I write these type of stories.
So is your message advocacy based? Are you advocating for victims in this platform? Is it your intention to advocate or to gain awareness? Because I think you're doing all of those things. I was so touched by the movie. I could just share with you. I beg your pardon? Yes, you're doing all of that.
Yeah, I am an advocate for the marginalized people, like I said, and I'm trying to bring awareness. I'm still a filmmaker. I don't do documentaries, so I still have to make it entertaining because people want to be entertained. But I also hope people go away being empowered and educated and learn something from my message. That's really important to me as a creative writer and a filmmaker. That's really important.
I think that you have done an amazing job in sending the message. We hear stories all the time, and I heard your interview with Mr. Pleasant, and that you had done research to learn that this is an overwhelming problem. And I was not sure if you were saying that you was not aware of that before you made the movie, which is why I asked the question, because when I watched your interview with Mr. Pleasant, it just sounded like you were just birthing something you thought was you wasn't sure the impact that you were making when you made the movie. So that interview was very interesting to learn that your research, just enlightened you to so many of the other dimensions to this story. And how real it was in the lives of other people beyond those depicted in the characters you chose as you casted your play. I mean, the movie. But I will say that was a particular part of the movie that I felt very much drawn to was the characters and the commander and the victim and how real it was, because you hear these stories all the time. This is how real it was. We hear these stories all the time. And I'm just saying that your messaging has penetrated many areas. So I was very, very careful about what I wanted this discussion to be about, because I would hope to have you back on as you continue to grow the platform using the movie to tell the many aspects of the story. Because as female victims, there's a discussion on gender-specific MST. There's a conversation around the issue of retaliation, or how the command should respond when they have reports of these situations, and certainly the terror that is caused from the retaliation by the command when they threaten their victims. Of course, we know now there's a discussion around victims who have been murdered when they try to speak out within their commands, and there are no other recourse for them to get reports, and now we need protection from them. How were you able to capture and harness that particular part that was so emotional? How were you able to, are you a victim? I don't want to ask that question. How were you able to harness that particular area?
You can ask the question.
I'm going to let you tell your story. I don't want to tell your story. I wanted you to tell your story, because it harnessed such a strong emotional depiction of someone who experienced that. So I know you were able to harness and capture that, having not gone through that. So I'm not going to ask you that, because I don't want to intrude on that as a victim. Okay, but I will allow you to expound on any of that if you would like at this time, because I think it's important to know some of the strengths that you drew from in putting the story out there.
Well, again, I always say that, I try to use the words instead of victim, I say victor, because we survive. And when you survive, you're a victor to me in my mind. So that's what I feel. I mean, when I was in the military, something like that almost happened to me. One of my commanding sergeants tried to force himself on me. I knew martial arts. I have 2 black belts. I have one in Taekwondo. I have one in Wing Chun. I fought him off. But because I fought him off, I lost my rank, because I said I was going to take it over his head, but I didn't know any better. I was naive to think I could do that. I couldn't. So I lost my rank, and they made my time very hard, to the point where I almost had a nervous breakdown. So they gave me a discharge. It was an honorable discharge, but still it was a discharge. So I couldn't finish out my my service as I would have liked. So that was very disappointing. But my mindset was, how about I didn't know martial arts? And how about, I couldn't fight my way out of that. A lot of women don't know any form of martial arts or self-defense, and they do get raped. And I was just in a position, I always remember that, and I said, this story meant so much to me. Like I said, when I found out, I interviewed like 100 different veterans, and majority of them have been sexually assaulted, men and women. There's more men that get sexually assaulted in the military than women do, because there are more men in the military. And since the military is the largest employer in the world, you can just imagine the thousands and thousands of men and women who get sexually assaulted or raped every year. So, if I can do my part to raise awareness, and even if I have to share my story, even though it's heartbreaking as that is, and hard and painful, it's a way for me to share and get people to understand that more awareness needs to be done. It's not nearly enough. Like you said, there's some people who are dying. Stuff that's happening in Fort Hood right now is crazy. women and men being killed because they're trying to speak out that they were sexually assaulted. They're ending up missing and dead, and then that can happen too. Not just losing your rank, you can lose your life.
Miss Bullock, I'm going to call you Comrade Bullock. You are the epitome of strength. I am drawing so much strength in having you be able to break down to this particular dialogue because I know you have a plethora of information that you have filtered through all of your experiences. And I want you on the show as often as you can because we got to break this down. I want this documented here on this platform. Women Veterans Speak we started Women Veterans Speak back in 2009, and we began to talk about these kinds of things. I was on public radio in Philadelphia and talking about women, veterans, military, rape, those kind of things was a very unpopular topic at that time, at the level that it is now. And even the challenges in bringing this conversation to a certain platform was a struggle. And I'm sure that across the country, there are many women veterans that are now attesting the same types of challenges. But what you have allowed us to come into one space where we can go through your experience. I'm not going to ask you, is this your experience? Because I feel there's so much of you in this movie and all of the characters there that you become like the expert voice, having researched all of these different characters and understanding the importance and significance for how each character must be addressed, particularly with their roles in and outside of the military. I think that you shared much of that process. The running through the woods reminded me of myself when the movie starts and the soldier was trying to get away. She was in formation and apparently she veered off course. She had decided that she was going to run away. What was that mindset in that scene right there when she was running off course when she ran into a commander right there? What was the message there?
Well, she was going AWOL. She was trying to get out. She was trying to escape. She didn't feel as though she had been sexually assaulted by her commanding officer, her captain, and the female character, Sergeant Torres, just thought, she said, "I just can't take it. I got to get out of here." And she felt that was her only way to do it. It wasn't the right thing to do, but she was desperate. She was desperate to get out of there and get away from him. It's hard. I mean, imagine having to see your rapist every single day. You feel powerless. You feel powerless. You think he might do it again. It's just, you just have no control over your own life. So, of course you're going to get PTSD. Of course you're going to have depression. Of course you're going to think erratically and try to escape and go AWOL. She didn't care. She didn't care about her rank. She didn't care about her military career. She didn't care about anything. She just, in that moment, she just felt she had to get away.
When she ran into the commander and he tried to break her, it was terror. I felt terror from her. And as we moved through the movie and you were a spouse, and one of the roles, your character was depicted as a spouse. And I wanted to ask you, how did you feel to that experience? And did you ever know was it known beyond the commander pulling a rifle on you? Was it known that he was an abuser and he had actually been violating these military women? Because he admitted to having several women, at least 10 or 11 or 12, when asked by one of his peers. So my question to you is: did the wife character know that he was abusing women in the military prior to her leaving him in that incident?
No, she left because one, he hit her a few times. One, he pulled the gun on her, but he thought he was having an episode. He was having a PTSD episode of thinking he was back in Iraq, and he thought she was one of the Iraqis. So, but that was the straw for her. That's why she left. That was the straw. She said, "I can't deal with it anymore. You almost killed me, and you need help, but you're not going to get help, so I have to go." So she never knew about the other women. She never knew what he was doing. And of course, if she had known, I wouldn't have written it that way. But she didn't know.
Right. It was It was still a good way to transition into the end story after he was diagnosed with the prostate cancer. My question
Right.
from that, when you decided to go back to him and your friend, I love this, but the part about the equestrian therapy also, the horses. And we're going to talk about all of
Mhm.
this stuff. I can't wait to have you on again. But, this is just introductory, and I can't wait because this story needs to be broken down. But just to lay the foundation, I want to talk a little bit more about the scene when the he's confronted. I think he is being interviewed, and he is confronted by the news reporter, and a man stands up to him and he knocks him out. And while you think about the answer to that, I want you to also think about the position of the wife character who did not know that he was abusing other women, but she knew that he was a victim himself of some trauma, because whether it was combat related or childhood trauma, you had already had sympathized for him because of his own experience being traumatized as a military war veteran. So, in understanding those particular dynamics there, how can you compartmentalize the sympathy for the spouse who is traumatized from the war and the abuser? Okay, is the abuser traumatized also? Can you make some distinctions there, if you?
Well, I wanted, usually in a movie you only see, like you said, the victim side, which is usually the female. You never see the perpetrator. You never see what happens in his life or what made him a rapist. You really rarely see that in film. So I said I definitely wanted to show that side of it. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but that was my mindset. That people need to see what he's gone through. And a big part of that was the war. He was a 20-year veteran, 20-year serviceman. He's seen a lot of war. He's seen a lot of killings. He's seen a lot of, I really don't think soldiers should go over to war zones 3, 4, 5 times. You're definitely going to come back with PTSD and some serious issues. That happened to him. It goes deeper than that, and people see that when they watch the movie. But I wanted to show his side, not saying that audiences will be sympathetic to him, obviously, like they did to the female victim. But they could start, I want people to have an open mind and see why people do what they do, which is another reason why I've taken so many psychology courses, because you have to get inside the way people's minds work in order to put those type of characters on screen that are believable. So that's what I did with Captain Nixon's character.
Well, I think that you did an outstanding job. I just want to commend you for that. We are about to go into our second segment, and I tell you, the timing is. It really came to me as a surprise on this week after we had shared the program. Congressman Sanford Bishop, out of the 8th District of Columbus, Georgia, is going to be sharing in a program on WVON. I would love to have you join me for this next segment and come back with me on the other side of this program with Mr. Bishop. But if you would stay with us, I don't know if you have the time, but certainly if you don't, I'm scheduling you for next week again. You got to come back as soon as you are able, because the Congressman Bishop, what happens today is our regularly scheduled WVON program out of Chicago, America's Heroes Group. And the Congressional Black Caucus Veterans Brain Trust is a platform that provides online radio, but encompasses political, military veterans in such a way that it's a premier platform, I believe, that is very important for galvanizing many different organizations and certainly the Department of Veterans Affairs. I mean, there are so many influential people that are on this particular station, and I'm proud to be a co-host on this particular day. So because of the scheduling, we got set back a half an hour, which normally it would have been like an hour, half an hour up. If you could stay with us, we would come back to you at the top of the hour. But certainly, I definitely want you to know that this is just the beginning of our relationship. And I hope that you consider us comrades and friends, because there is work to be done. And I do believe that we share in the national platform for articulating across many mediums. I think this is just one of the ways where we can galvanize and grow the conversation. Certainly, the Chicago WVON is a place where the work there by the producers have extended into the arts, certainly this is the film is somewhere that it needs to be articulated and shared, and I want to encourage you to listen out for that opportunity because I'm going to throw your name in the ring and many other rings for sure. So we're going to be joining them probably in about 5 minutes because we have to get ready for that show. But I'm going to do it live on this program so that we will be talking through the same audience. And then we're going to come back on the top side and finish this program. If you're not available, I will understand if you have to drop off. But if you are available, this is an opportunity also for you if we could just make the announcement. The program agenda is usually set by me, but I was a little bit lenient this time because of my already scheduling. We have also on our line another broadcaster, Antonia Betts. Is there anything that you would like to say to Ms. Jillian Bullock while you're there? Antonia Betts is a broadcaster who has a large audience on another station who decided to join us today. Ms. Betts, is there anything that let me just tell you about Conrad Betts. Conrad Betts and I are very, I consider us friends, but we are supportive of one another in our various agendas throughout Philadelphia and the nation in articulating on military and veterans affairs. And she has been hosting a show that has quite an audience on another program. But certainly I'd like to invite her in just to see if she has any questions. Ms. Betts, are you there?
Yes, good afternoon. How are you?
I am well. Would you please,
How are you?
please, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Kathy. How are you? And good afternoon to your guest.
Yeah, Jillian Bullock, filmmaker from Philadelphia.
Oh, okay. Well, pleased to meet you, Ms. Bullock. My name is Ms. Betts, and I've been listening to your content, and it seems as if you have a story I've heard of, not highly amongst women veterans, but there have been tidbits of times when I heard something here and there every so often. And after having heard about the movie that was put out for the general audience in the film of television, in the form of television, it was called Tailhook. I said, okay. I said, that's a start. I heard there may be another one in circulation somewhere. I forgot the name of the movie itself. But, it offers an opportunity for people to understand that, unfortunately, we do have an occasional person who, within the services, do take advantage of the situation. And it's bad because it makes the whole population of male and female persons to have to sit back and assume that they may or may not stand a chance on either being a suspect of a victim. And we don't want to question people's intentions, but we have to be realistic. This happens even in the civilian side of things. So thank you very much for sharing what had occurred with you, and only because hopefully there was not only a healing process for you by just putting it out there, but an opportunity for you to do something with that to let people know that this serves a purpose of you putting it out there. So good to meet you.
Okay, same here. I'm glad you. I hope you
you.
get a chance to watch the movie and see what you think about it.
Well, I'll ask Kathy when you're finished broadcasting for the day if she can provide me the information on how to be able to see your movie. And thank you very much. I'd love to.
We are going to be putting that movie everywhere. I've watched it, but I really want to get the interview. So when we do promote the movie, I want people to also hear from you about the movie. So this was my strategy for really letting people know how real you are. You are real. You understand. So there's nothing like seeing a movie and knowing where it originates, where the concept originates. So I think this will make a wonderful couple. If you want to just apply both the movie itself, but then having the director and the visionary behind it to tell their story, this is the way I'd like to introduce for moving forward. I'm going to put you all on a brief hold as we go into our other program, and I hope that you will stay with us. But if not, certainly Jillian, filmmaker, visionary, with greater works to come, author. We are certainly going to be doing other things, and certainly she's going to be back to talk about this if she's on the other side of our program, if she doesn't have another scheduled event, certainly we would like to get back on the line with her. But certainly we're going to be joining Chicago, WVON, iHeart Radio, and on Facebook at America's Heroes Group in about 2 minutes. Please stay with us. We'll be right with you. We're listening to America's Heroes Group.
Nothing other than fantastic.
Thank you, the one and only Governor of Talk Radio. Hi, this is Glenda.
This is Kathy Santos. This is Kathy Santos on the line.
Okay, Kathy, why are you calling in today? And you got something.
Oh, you know. Is anybody listen? This is going to move forward with our show, Women Veterans Speak. We are going to go on and have a conversation with Jillian Bullock. Are you still there, Ms. Bullock? This one's just a little bit too important to be distracted right now. I'm like, let's get back to Ms. Bullock while we have her on the line, because this is a very important day for laying a backdrop for moving forward. Ms. Bullock, I'd like to just ask you, could continue on in your conversation. For the time, you have as much time as you want. I thought we were going to be going to the broadcast, but it looks like there's some confusion about getting on the line, but that's okay. This is very important for what work we are going to be doing ahead. Ms. Batts has been doing radio for quite some time. She's an experienced broadcaster, and she's also experienced with modeling, and she's done many of the fashion shows and helped with all of our public relations and imaging consulting for our programs in Philadelphia, being a central page for Essence Magazine. Yoo-hoo. Ms. Betts, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
And I hope you don't mind me talking just a little bit about your history out there in the world of, I guess it would be, the arts is still relevant, but certainly you have out there been working certainly with the Saks in New York City, where you have been somewhat of an image, I guess, as consulting or working the platform by which you have become expert and sharing that in your work as a military woman. And it's all encompassing. And I think this is what Ms. Jillian Bullock is saying, that from the martial arts, the military experience, I just put on Facebook that women veterans are some of the most highly trained individuals. So my question has been over the past few years, what are some of the challenges that causes us to become dysfunctional when we leave the service? Ms. Bullock, I'd like for you to see if you could have any feedback on that particular question, because you have gone through the challenge prior to service, entered service, and found some sustainability. But what about before you went into service? How does that role, how does that factor into your present day, how does that factor into your present day identity? What can you say to military women who? Let me just completely. I think I want to add something to the question. I apologize. What can you say to military women who find themselves somewhat in a reverse situation when they come out of the military and they seem to fall through the cracks? Can you help us to fill in some of those gaps there?
Well, I mean, like I said, a lot of women come out of the military, and men, but a lot of women come out and who have been damaged in some way, and it's a lot of times it is through sexual assault, unfortunately. And the problem is that when they come home, a lot of them don't even tell their loved ones or friends or family what they went through, because it's still, you know what, it's still shameful, especially with men, because they're like, well, you know, you're a guy, you shouldn't get raped, you know, and they have that stigma attached to them, but it can happen to anybody. So when you come home, you're feeling ashamed. So you're trying to be strong, and you just don't want to burden people. But people just think you have PTSD because of what you saw while you were overseas or something. They don't know the other part. There are women that, when I showed my movie to various veterans organizations, there are women that stood up and said for the first time in their lives, I too was sexually assaulted. And it could have been like 30 years ago this happened, and they're just now saying it, announcing it to the world. That happens to a lot of people. So if they come out, anything like that is going on, definitely they should get the help that they need, whether it's through the VA or through private therapy. They need to let everybody know. I would let everyone know what happened. I didn't even mention it myself when I first came out. Again, the stigma and everything. Until I got therapy. It took me many years till I got therapy over it. And that therapy helped. The martial arts helped a lot, too. The fact that I could fight off my attacker, that made me feel good, even though I felt upset that I lost my rank and everything. But I had been raped when I was 10 by a family friend, and then I started taking martial arts, and I said, I will never allow that to happen to me again. So when the sergeant did what he tried to do, I didn't care what happened to my rank or anything else. He just wasn't going to do that to me, and I was determined not to let that happen.
I find your story to be so remarkable, and the prior service, the service, and how you were able to defend yourself in all of these situations. It's something about you that just the epitome of strength. When you're talking about at 10 years old, 16 years old, being homeless, many adult women veterans are still challenged at gaining some stability. They sometimes find it very difficult to recover. What is it that you think that you had that was uniquely different that allowed you to seek the tools to sustain yourself, to grow beyond the 10-year-old rape or the 16-year-old homelessness? What was that mindset like for you to for you to realize that you needed to defend yourself and it was within you to become empowered? What are some of those things as a child that many adults find challenged today when we are in those situations? I think that your story is very empowering, certainly for me, and I know it is for those other many women veterans who will experience your story, because it hits so many areas. Because the VA now, in my opinion, since we do talk about the VA as a part of your research and whatever, PTSD, but the VA now has uniquely identified trauma, post-military trauma, in response to the complaints and reports of military sexual trauma. What I will also ask for you to consider in your conversation here today is that what I know to be true, there was a 2004 report of nurses, Vietnam-era nurses, that identified military sexual assault and military sexual trauma and gave various distinctions among ethnicity, race, place of origin, and those other specific distinctions. One of the things that concerned me back in 2004 was the comment of a nurse that said that African American women veterans are treated differently when they are raped, and somewhat left that particular statement where it was. So I made that a part of a huge discussion on the radio program at the time, which I was hosting. But I would like to ask you if, in fact, you found any ethnic specifics that presented any particular challenge for you. Can you talk a little bit about your ethnic, I'm going to say, origin, some of the different distinctions that when you see through the lens, what lens do you see through as far as ethnicity and race? If we can go back to that and ask the question that way. You know where I'm going with that.
Yeah, of course, women of color are always treated differently, no matter where we are. Military, doctors treat us differently. It doesn't matter. In the workplace, we're treated differently. We're just not given the respect that we deserve as women of color. They see us as less than. They don't think we have pain. If you talk to most doctors don't think black people experience pain like white people. So we're treated differently there. Don't get the help that we need there. We don't get the help mentally and emotionally that we need for sure. They tend to say, you know, like I said in the movie, when you saw the movie, when it opens up and the captain is talking to Sergeant Torres, he just tells her to suck it up. You know, she says, "You raped me," and he says, "Suck it up." And that's usually what happens to women, especially women of color. So it makes it even more difficult to get the help that we need to speak out, because we're fearful that no one will believe us, or if they do believe us, that nothing can be done. Or the other side is just people just don't care, and that's heartbreaking, because so many women are suffering, and especially women of color are suffering because just so fearful to come forward and speak their truth, and that's a problem. This is why I write these type of movies.
One of the things that is being discussed in the women veterans advocacy community is that the military has a culture of rape. And so one of the challenges from sitting on the other side of the conversation over the years, I think we are having a more transparent platform now for having these discussions as women veterans are becoming more empowered. But historically, the conversation has been much based on the influence of the decision makers, whether it's the EEOC, the DOD, whatever the policies that were that guided the conversation. It came from the male population. And one of the challenges that I've learned from sitting in at the table of Washington, D.C. is the defects that they have in adjudicating cases is most of the time they find faults within the victim. They call it victim blaming or something. But what I do know is part of the conversation also, which we're not having as victims or as women, is the conversation that speaks to women who actually use their sexual prowess to advance their careers and to get promotions and to gain favor amongst their superiors. And that missing conversation kind of skips over to all men are rapists, or men are rapists and women are victims. However, there's conversation that men are victims. I had a conversation this morning with a male attorney who is a rape victim. I know several male rape victims who do not identify with being they sound as victimized as the women, but there's a conversation that they don't have too about hazing as men in the military. So there's some type of rituals that they practice in the Navy that they skip over in the conversation. So everything's just about victimized rape victims, but the conversation has to be dissected because on the other side of the conversation, they're saying, okay, well, if women believe that they can be drunk and wake up in their superior's bed after a night in the bar, then, and let's have this conversation candid because I think it's important, then they're saying that that's why it's so hard to adjudicate the cases because they do have these reports as well. So when the accuser tells a story and makes a report, the investigation becomes transparent. So when the accused gets the opportunity to tell their story, they will tell about these encounters. They could be lying about it or whatever, but they have two sides to a story now. So the adjudicator, the military, now has to make a decision on what is truthful. But the immediate response is to remove the victim or the accused from that environment for an investigation. And I think this is where we find a lot of the gray area because the belief that the victims are not being removed soon enough, that retaliation sometimes can magnify and become so intense that terror, that's what I saw in the movie, that she had not been removed. I don't know if she had ever reported that he had threatened her. You know, she was terrorized. She was in terror. And her depiction of her terror was in every situation. I just believe that when she encountered the man that tried to talk to her in the cafe, she had started to internalize her rage toward that gentleman. Do you remember that part? What was it that she was experiencing when the gentleman was trying to engage her, pick up or hook up or whatever? But she really was outraged at him. And that was a very, very good scene because that was the scene with the martial arts. And I was saying, wow, these ladies are good. I had no idea where it came from, but now I know. It was like, oh, my God.
I had to teach them.
That was an amazing scene right there. So I want everybody to watch this movie because there is such good acting in this movie that you were drawn into it and you say, oh, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. You know, look at those women. They were really holding their own. So could you just share a little bit about the mindset of the character when, you know, she was defending herself in that situation, but could she not defend herself from that rapist? What is that unique distinction there that she could not? She had been terrorized on her mind against an individual. What is that? What is the psychology there?
Well, you know, and she's in a bar and it's a different situation. She's angry at her captain, obviously, so she's taking it out on this guy, but this guy in her mind is threatening her because he won't leave her alone. She keeps saying, leave me alone. He refuses to. So in her mind, she just has flashbacks to Captain Nixon. She couldn't do anything to Captain Nixon because he's her commanding officer. They're overseas. They're in Iraq or Iran or Afghanistan. It's not like she could just hail an Uber and get home. You can't. You're miles away. You can't get home. She's stuck there with her captain who sexually assaulted her. At home, it's different. You know, she can protect herself because that's not her captain, and she can leave after she's finished. She can leave and walk away. So she was pouring all that anger and everything that she had for Captain Nixon out on this gentleman that was in the bar with her, trying to, you know, pick her up.
And again, Ms. Bullock, that brought home to me, you know, once you file the report, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my case here because what they do is they will send people on you. And right in that scene, it reminded me of how they try to trap women into these promiscuous types of scenarios so that they can have that part of their defense. So it reminded me of the times when I was lured, okay, into situations where I would be offered a drink, okay, and I knew that it was my commander there. Let me tell you about that gray area, which I was just sharing with you about why they have that strong defense on the other side of the military. because they do set those narratives. If you can fill in right there to see if person had been sent there to challenge her, had she made the report. But in that little area there, for what I am reminded of is how often I had been lured or attempted to be lured into situations where I'd be offered a drink or be offered up to someone's hotel room because I had no history of behaviors that were promiscuous or challenging my character. But if in fact that women who are strong and they know that they're a victim, and when they make that report and their character is not one that's going to be questioned, they do set these narratives up. If you can understand that particular scene had it been a little bit different and it had been staged. Staging is a huge part of the narrative that is being presented that causes us not to be able to talk about our story realistically. And when they get ready to defend the male population, they really do stick together, and it seems like they gang up on the victim, and I'm saying that because I saw the experience where the commander told his friend that he said when he asked how many times when he confessed this situation to his friend, I could never saw such sympathy for the victim. He literally showed compassion, and was ashamed of his friend. And I thought that was very commendable to show that soul and that sympathy coming from that population. That was a very good piece in there for me to see, because you don't see those behind the scenes conversations when these things come out. You think that they are actually working together, but I think there's a certain level of pressure that comes to behind the scenes that we stick together on these things. So we had a general this past week at Fort Hood lose his rank to colonel because he had a report by a young recruit, a young soldier, where she reported that he had touched her in the rear, on her butt, or whatever the case was. He said it was an accident. He did not even realize that to be the case. And even after apologizing, this man was broke down. He was broke down to a full bird colonel from being a general, which he had just been promoted to. And he also he decided to resign after 30 years at that time. Do you think that the military response is appropriate in the channels which they take, who are trained to defend the country under the UCMJ? Do you think that the response is uniquely specific to our military environment, because it is, these people for a reason, and there's a whole lot of training into becoming a general? What can you say to that particular response when you're adjudicating, or even if you are in a compromised position as the EO or the XO or the EEO in the military? How can we see through that? What is the appropriate response?
Well, the appropriate response would be if they change things, they need to take it out of the hands of the commanding officer, out of the military. It should be just like it is in private practice. If you're raped or I'm raped, we can go to the police, get a lawyer, and have a court, a trial. That's the same way it should be with the military. It should be out of their hands, because, it's so rare that something happens and you said the general went to a colonel, but still that's rare. Usually they get off. They get off. Normally they get off, and with nothing happening to them. It's like you said, the victim is the one that gets shunned and threatened and pulled away, or even dead, could end up dead somewhere. So I think it should be taken out of the hands of the military totally. And I know there's been a lot of senators who have tried to get that to happen, but the House always votes against it and everything. But I think that's the best way to do it, because one of the men that I interviewed, a couple of the men that I interviewed, actually confessed it to me that they had raped women while they were in the military. So a couple of the people I interviewed, one guy actually told me, he said, if you are a rapist or you thinking about becoming a rapist, the best place to go is in the military, because they don't do what they should do. Now, that's a sad statement, I think.
It is a sad statement. And, the challenge that I see as women becoming more empowered, and they ask for equality in the military, and it presents somewhat of a two-edged sword when when there are women who are asking for equality, and equality has to be more clearly defined when you talk about workspace protection and all those other things, because there's a lot of things that are encompassed with workplace equality, particularly in the military. It is not a corporation. It's something that is very unique to a sophisticated society, a very organized group of influential people that govern there. And what I see, particularly with the Vanessa Gillian case, where her body was mutilated and found in 3 different places, buried. The story has yet. Beg your pardon?
I said yes. I know this case. Yeah.
Yeah. So this story has taken a different position here in the fight and the advocacy for sexual assault. But I know that the conversation continues. I don't know if the military is going to be divided in adjudicating cases. It's going to be a very, very complex agenda. I know that there's been several House floor conversations about this, but what I do know is that you cannot present half the story to the Congress because they're hearing from both sides. So when we go to the Congress floor, we're only hearing about the rape victims. When they go and adjudicate these particular conversations to see what laws can we pass, what policy can we implement, they're also hearing about the accused. So when the accused can come back and show pictures of the female in their bed or whatever story that they have, the narrative that they set, okay, they're not telling the public that they actually have this, but they have the stories of the accused also and their defenses. And sometimes we never know if it's what's truthful. We don't get the chance to have that because I'm telling you this, the JAG orders, I'm going to tell you my particular case, and I'm just going to share a little bit, was a Pentagon 15-6. The Pentagon investigation is a little bit more complex. And mine was unique because I, too, escaped from my imprisonment on my post. And escaping my imprisoned environment, which I realized one day, the only thing that was blocking me from escaping was an order. There were no walls there. And then you come to the realization that you're not going to take it anymore. That's why seeing the soldier running through the woods reminded me of myself, because that moment of escape, you seize it when you see it. And what I did was, in my particular situation, I escaped to the Pentagon. I got in my car and I just started driving until I got to the Pentagon. And when I got to the Pentagon, I just dumped out a whole load of papers all over the floor, no particular order. But I just was glad to be there because they received me with respect and they received me with integrity. There was never any question about my story. There was never any question about my desperation to get help. So I do know that there's a multidimensional dialogue around reporting and a multidimensional conversation around how people respond and who is responding and who you should be report things to. So I want us to go into that on another conversation because I think my story and the story that is in the film, as well as the stories when you hear from many, you're talking about 400,000 women among our population that has reported rapes in the past 10 years. There are so many stories. They are incredible, uniquely different. And I'm telling you that there must be some way for us. And I think that what is going to happen, we have a young Thai female in prison on the Chesapeake, and one of the Chesapeake Navy, she's actually in prison in a mental hospital because she was jailed. She was jailed, but she's now in a mental hospital. Stories are unique to the response that they get from their superiors. And I think that the superiors sometimes panic. They don't know what to do because of their knowledge about these soldiers or whatever the story is. They don't know what to do. And they respond sometimes out of desperation. The military officers, they don't know what to do either in some cases. But the ones who are accused, they have to be identified. And again, I think that your conversation about what the mindset of the individual was when you, as his wife, had to defend yourself as a spouse, not a military person, but a spouse from the same individual that this person who was a military person had to defend themselves from. You knew that this man had some psychological issues, okay? So do we have rape culture or do we have mental illness? Or do we have a combination of all of those things going on in the mindsets of these males? There are women who have reported rape by other women in their commands. I have heard, I have been, yes, there is a lot of different dimensions to this platform. And so, when we talk about males, there are a lot of aggressive females that have raped women and men in the military. So the conversation needs to be more transparent. I think we must have it. We must have the conversation. And then we can go to them and demand what should happen. And I think that's the only way this is going to be brought full circle.
Okay. I agree.
I know. I bring another dimension. You've done a lot of research, but the conversation that I have in being down here in Washington, you hear the confusion. You hear the multi-complex conversations from different people depending on the role that they have. I met General Hartog. General Hartog was probably one of the most significant roles of advocates in our military. She was a general. General Hartog may have been two-star, I don't recall, but she actually was assigned as staffer of the assault and harassment response operations down in Washington, D.C., and under the DOD. And let me just tell you, she was a very compassionate person, but what made her so important was her history in the military as a law enforcement and policy expert. So when she came in that role to address sexual assault, you know who she was attacked by? Assault victims. They didn't believe in her. I knew that she was the person that could bring all of the many dimensions together. So as we were filming, and I want to share this because I don't know if you saw the movie The Invisible War, but yours by far bring this to make it more real for me. It's just another dimension. But the General Hartog brought the conversation in a real way because she wanted to help victims, but she also was law enforcement. She represented the police. She also represented policy. All of that was encompassed in her, but she was fought by a sexual assault advocacy team on the outside, which I never, ever understood. But what she did tell me was that they threatened her job if she did not agree to the representation in the movie Invisible War that there was a rape culture and rape was running rampant in the military. She did not want to take that position because she believed that she was in a position to see things in a different way, which I understood her. So as a result of that, I think that conversation and the whole issue with the Invisible War, it did not get the impact that I believe that Sense of Purpose will get. I don't want to dominate and commandeer this conversation. I just want to add a little bit just to include a different dimension, a different dialogue, because there's another real conversation down here. And another thing that I'd like to get you to understand also in my hearing is that there is such an overlap in discussing military protocols, policy, and the culture from a perspective that kind of integrates all of the conversation into one voice. I think that as what I've come to understand, that we must make some distinction when we speak as military, that we have an understanding of the Code of Military Justice, the UCMJ, the Geneva Convention, and the various other laws that govern us, which separates us when we make the oath of office or the oath of service. Once we raise our hands to the oath of service, we acquiesce all of our rights to the Constitution on the military side. We are no longer independent in terms of how we process things independently. And that's the unique thing that we must talk about when we talk about adjudicating these cases outside of the military, because that oath of office draws a line between what is military, what is civilian, and certainly once you leave the military, what is veteran. Those all have very different and unique laws, which in a conversation, we don't necessarily make those specificities on, if you understand what I'm saying. And that's why that whole confusing piece needs to be interpreted and translated to the civilian legislators. Because if they don't have the legislation to respond to all of these components, that's why it doesn't get passed. I've read all of the legislation that presents to these Congress, and I can assure you, the way we're talking is more specific to these distinctions. What they're hearing when it comes from these victims that are getting to the legislators who are not military, it's very discombobulated, if you understand what I'm saying. And it's a lot of emotion. You cannot legislate compassion. And it has to come in a way where you understand policy, the CFR, UCMJ, Geneva Convention, the Ferris Doctrine, and all of that, because all of this is relevant to making sure that the legislation impacts the particular people and how you can actually identify what role you must take when you're either in the military or outside of the military. I know that was a lot, but I just wanted to say that and go on record with what I understand to be one of the key problems why the legislation gets kicked back. 16 cases of sexual assault were presented in a class action lawsuit. Every one of those cases were thrown out of a federal court. And I will tell you that set a precedent in how they're responding to us. So there has to be a revisited agenda. You must revisit those same platforms, but it must be done in a way where we respect the government and not attack the government, because the government, I think, is trying to learn also what is it that we are doing wrong here. But when you get to the table, you will find people there who have not the experience on the different legislation and the layers of the tiers of advocacy. And I think that was what was important. I needed to just note as far as why they're not being adjudicated outside of the military, particularly when there was a case in 2014, 1,000 cases in Lackland Air Force Base were reported by two generals, one a 4-star and one 5-star, who were training commanders down in Lackland Air Force Base in Texas. These cases were presented in a way where they described the reports, how they decided on the 59 cases that they did find as legitimate cases and substantiated. But the two military persons that represented were demanding that all of the commanders in the training command be fired. That was the only option that they gave to Congress. Rather than teaching or training, they wanted all of the officers in the command, anybody that was part of the reporting hierarchy, that they be fired, discharged from the military. So the hearing was going on, and Tammy Duckworth, who was just recently, at that time, elected as congressperson. So as she was wheeled into Congress, I was there as press at the time, and it was there when we listened to the two Army and an Air Force person deliver their testimonies. But she said, and her question to them was, do you expect us to fire and discharge everybody in the command, despite all of the millions of dollars that goes into training them, which is a key part for our understanding? She said, with all of the money that goes into the training of these officers, is it your contention that we should fire them all? And the crowd of women veterans in the background, yeah, they rallied up and they were saying, yeah. I'm going to tell you, it wasn't 5 minutes before they closed that hearing down. Lacking military protocols, respect for the government and the Congress, the legislators were talking to the generals as though they were two, people off the street. It was very disrespectful to watch. It was very difficult to watch. But I tell you that they closed those hearing downs in 5 minutes, and they were discussing that there had been 4 charges brought against Robert Gates and Donald Rumsfeld for these 4 women who wanted to go fighting in combat. And one of the things that they specified was that these were lesbian women. We don't deal with the gender-specific roles until we deal with it. But gender definitions and distinctions are very important. So that when that hearing closed out, those congresspeople were left with unresolved issues, all the money that was spent by the taxpayers to put that hearing together, okay? And everybody that had converged on Capitol Hill that day, including myself, that was a failed agenda because it was not properly planned. It was given, the information was poor, and somehow the legislators thought that they could talk to these generals with the tone of disrespect. So just to add another dimension on what happens when you're in those hearing rooms, what happens when you're in those legislative bodies, this is the kind of conversations that are very confusing. And when we are out here trying to figure out, well, why can't the laws get passed? It's because we are the ones who need to be at the table, I think, in terms of helping them to identify some of these specific platforms that are not covered by civilians who are speaking on our behalf as legislators, or individuals that are paid consultants, such as Tal Hook. I think Ms. Betts spoke about Paula Coughlin, who was one of the consultants in the 2014 hearing. Now, Paula Coughlin, of course, was given over $1 million in a book deal when she reported being groped on that Navy submarine. so we do know that there are many types of environments too that to be considered, whether they're submarine type or traditional military environments. But we also have the Iraq and Afghanistan wars where they are unique to these other open environments where the front lines are unique and different too. So, there's a lot to the conversation. I know that I could add a lot to what you have already researched, but when you open up the discussion, I just need to fill in some of the blanks as to what I know to be factual on the end, what we don't hear about in Congress. And I hope I've enlightened you to some degree as to what may be missing when we're talking about resolution, legislation, and how can we solve problems, and when will what can we expect from our legislators, and how will they respond to these cases. I know that this has been a very robust discussion. We've gone off the script. We're talking about your movie, but this is all relative to your role as an advocate, and certainly I hope that we'll get back to that. Ms. Batts, is there anything I could get you to chime in at this point because you listen so attentively? But Ms. Batts, I want you to lead in a conversation at some point because your conversation comes from a totally different place than myself. But we must continue to talk.
Kathy, I have a Zoom meeting with my film producers that I'm already
Yes,
late
ma'am.
for.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm going to jump off.
Okay, well, can I contact and reach out to you later about possibly following up? Certainly, Ms. Bullock is going to be part of our conversation in the future.
Okay, can we do that tomorrow? Because I'm going to be on a while with my producers because we're talking about two movies that I'm producing and directing. So if we could do it tomorrow, I'm free. You can let me know what time you'd like to speak again. All right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate you having me on the show and look forward to talking to you tomorrow. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
And nice meeting you too. Look forward to being able to view the film that you had. So, I'm sure Kathy will pass the information to me. Good luck on your Zoom meeting too.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, hi, Kathy.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pat. And I want to hear all about the work that you're doing. I know you've been awfully quiet lately. I want to hear all about it.
Coming from my standpoint, don't know where to begin, don't know where to end, but coronavirus had made me take a turn to a lot of projects that I at least had given some concerns to that would, help the community to go into a different direction. And nothing to brag about, I will say, so to, as the saying goes. But, I can say that one of the two talk shows that I have been on, one of 8 years, one of about 3, wanted to nominate me to a International Hall of Fame for consideration of receiving the 2020 award, and I appreciate it. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to sound unappreciative, but I'm not in this game of doing what I do because I have anything at this time anyway to gain from anything. I've lost a lot of going into this field at a time when it was unexpected, and I wanted to become employed, at least in some capacity in another area. But, I just thought since I was already into community contributions, even from the time I returned to Philadelphia from being in South Carolina for about a decade, that it wouldn't hurt for me to do some degree of whatever I can make as a contribution. Given that I did go to college and use that broadcast information as a basis to receive a lower certificate, but it was accredited. And I tell you that for a reason. Some people feel as though that broadcasting you have to get a degree on a much higher level, but I have also background experience while I was in the service where I was stationed in the same field, so that compensated for the difference in time and education, if you want to use that way. So I used it more so because it was really meant to be done in the beginning in 2013 when I came on board as just a catalyst just to use as fun and games on behalf of the person who had his particular broadcast. Eventually, it wound up being an undertaking as a community piece when I was asked to do it as a show for myself. I was thinking about, do I have any time, considering that I had a young adult child who, was entering college, and knowing that I could not afford to make that type of free contribution, knowing that I needed to be in a paid situation. So it didn't exactly sound like fun and glitz and glamour in no way, or however you want to do it. So time went on, and the shows were presented sometimes weekly, sometimes bi-weekly. I had stopped for a very small, brief moment of time, then allowed myself to be reintroduced to it. And when I did, I had to bring up the fact that since I was already involved for a couple of decades since I returned to Philadelphia in Town Watch, which is a sort of like an addendum to the police force, an addendum to just be concerned about our community, not to be a person participating in an overtaking or an overly involvement on a payroll like the police. It was more so, if we see something, say something, as the present saying goes these days. We didn't want, the children in the community infiltrated. We didn't want the young adults to undergo no many more problems than what they already have by just acting as if we don't see or hear something. So with Town Watch being a very integrated service here at 10th and Spring Garden, I thought it was important to let them understand that it doesn't take anything for me to help protect my community if it's done on a level that I know where my place in the whole matter could be. Since then, I became a member and served in a capacity of being a person who, if I was called upon to attend some of the conventions, just like many of the other people here in this city, thousands of them in different communities, they had conventions for that purpose. The budget took a turn, and as a result, we were considered still legitimate members, no matter the fact that we didn't have the annual conference. But I have learned my fair share of things that had taught me that when it comes to things like Homeland Security, at least I can be aware of it. When it comes to things like if there were arrests made and for under what conditions, and some of the things the police went through that said that surprised them, at least I was aware of it. So it wasn't done on a large scale that this information had been presented to us, but at least we had a basic idea of the enlightenment that it brought. Okay, so anyway, to bring it back up to date, so as a result, I did attend the Women's International Convention that was held at the Red Cross here in Philadelphia, and with our newly appointed commissioner, I can consider her as photogenic as well as myself when we took a basic, picture. And it wasn't that she was acknowledging me from Town Watch, but I did tell her that I support them for the reason I know their job isn't hard. I'll say easy, rather. And sometimes being a person on the other end of the spectrum, sometimes out here in the community, our job is just being citizens. It's not easy either. So as a result, that was one of the encountered situations I've experienced, like maybe less than 2 weeks before coronavirus had struck. Let's see, I've also was a spokesperson for a group called Our Closet, held at Neiman Marcus. I heard you say Saks, but that's okay. It was at Neiman Marcus.
When I said Saks, I knew I meant to say Neiman. I forgot. I wasn't sure. I knew it was one of the ones up there in New York.
That's okay. Just one of the other high-end stores, one of many, who, by the way, is in limbo about...
Let me ask you a question more specific to that, because, as you were modeling and presenting those fashion shows that with such expert, consulting and organizing. Do you find that also filters as a therapy or an experience that kind of allows you to focus on something other than your women veteran status? Because we all have our issues as women veterans. Do you also find that so help us to understand what that is for you when you're able to channel that positive energy and do such great work with such excellence, from you have to send me an electronic copy of that centerfold from the Essence magazine, because that is such a beautiful picture, and you're still beautiful. But let me just say this the way I see it, because when you put those fashion shows together with such precision, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do another one in the future, because that is who you are. Do we lose ourselves as veterans? Do we lose who we are in that? How do we find ourselves, if that's something that you can help us to hone in? How do we find ourselves when we leave the military? How do we get back to that person with dreams and visions about other great things in our lives?
Well, God bless you for thinking that the photograph was considered beautiful. I had a roommate in college who said that they looked a mess. But, God bless her. I hope that with her being out of Virginia, that she's learned a lesson about being critical and not realizing I could have been a catalyst for her to further her aspirations, if no more as a fashion designer, if she would have played her hands right. So sometimes when a person especially doesn't disrespect you, it's not smart to disrespect them either. But nevertheless, back to the issue, so it was just before I went into the service that I actually did the modeling piece. Based on a background, I'm not going to go in depth about that I've had, that pretty much lent his ability for me to be included in that. It wasn't that I just went in there dry and I thought I was cute. I had somebody who knew somebody or whatever. I went in there with skills. And as a result, luckily, when they presented my particular portrait of whatever I modeled, the 3 given pictures, they were addressing the fact that not only was I in college, but I was also a person who, I wasn't a teenager going into college, but I was close to it, but I also came through there with expertise, not because of good favors that were done for me. Because when I did have one degree of expertise, I was fairly younger than, even before the Essence picture, that was actually a centerfold, and so as a result, one picture on one side, one on another, and a small one, which was the one I liked, hidden away just about up in the top left corner. It was something that I considered a milestone, because it wasn't like I went in there as a celebrity and danced my way, sung my way, and told that I was looking bootylicious. I had more so the attire of a professional woman who wanted to take life seriously. So everybody don't have to approach it from that direction, but for me it worked. So going into the service, I knew there would be probably a good-sized chunk of my life that would be taken from me for the reason also I wanted to continue with a little college. I didn't have to have a lot because I know my platform I've already had slated for myself, depending on what I would like to go back to college for as well. So as a result, I went in the direction of staying in college much, much longer than I was, because I had to work to keep a roof over my head. And while I was doing that, and it just dragged on, for other reasons. But I don't regret it, because I knew it would be a way I would be into the field of fashion. Yes, it's fun to some people, and it can lend a way of some people using it as a way to support their mental capacity and saying, I could look nice in this, and I could look nice in that. Looking nice and actually getting an opportunity to enjoy it, there's so many other avenues you can feed into that. You know, they didn't put me in Gentlemanly Quarters magazine with the opportunity to like just appeal to men, or they didn't put me in something that Cyndi Lauper, you know, had as a little 17 magazine look to the tune of back in the day, Girls They Just Want to Have Fun as her song or something. But I'm sure that other people, they would enjoy it, and I'm not going to knock them. But I knew that I would venture into that even further for other purposes that I would serve that I don't even predict. Like when in our closet that I had given the speech at Neiman Marcus, by the way, who's undergoing some bankruptcy issues, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if they'll re-enter the market like Taylor Shoe Source is planning on doing it or not. But I was given the creme de la creme treatment. I appreciate that. It's not the first, but it was the best of the best time because it was amongst a bunch of wonderful, beautiful women who had did charitable events themselves, and they became donors. And you may as well say on the Google page, they have pretty much got a chance to show themselves in their little cute little, you know, casual outfits. It wasn't a formal event, but it was done with a nice little pizzazz. And I will say that one of the purposes I did serve in our closet, as well as several other things when I given my speech, was the women mostly. Even had been a couple of men who we talked during the time we had to tough it out trying to get, you know, the few pieces we were allotted per month of clothing that were contributed by these wonderful donors and whoever else in the establishment to the Our Closet event. I could never get the best pieces because I had other things. I couldn't get out there quite that early in the morning. I would get up early enough, but getting out there as early as some people, it was just a little beyond me right at the time, considering I had to travel by bus and go to these different locations. And I was able to teach some of the women on, well, really they came to me because somebody leaked out the word about my involvement in fashion. Next thing you know, I couldn't stop them. What did I do that for? What did they do that for?
But I know that you delivered.
Yeah. Even though I couldn't get the best pieces, I have to admit they would approach me, asking me to consult them on should they get this, or since we're limited in pieces, how many we can get. Should they get this or should they get that? Would this look right on me? How is it sizing up? You know, it's so many other things that you have to factor in on dressing other people other than yourself. You forget to dress yourself properly almost sometimes, but you do what you do because you know that people are relying on you. Maybe some of them just want to look nice if they go somewhere. Maybe some of them, they would like myself trying to re-enter the workforce so I can get my kid back into college, you know. Maybe some of them, it was mental and psychological, how do they say, a contribution to whatever their life should take a turn for and become better so they can be better within their community, have more self-esteem, more of a sense of setting an example in the community that, yes, you can live in a low-income environment and still have very nice dress wear and look like somebody. When I was living down south for... Yes.
Miss Pat, let me stop you right there. Do you remember the fashion show we did with Ron Welch? That was Eve.
Yes, I do.
Entertainer, yeah. So when he... those were some very nice pieces, were they not? And
yes.
Let me tell you, I hesitate when I'm not sure how we connected, but he said, I want to present some models for your show. And you guys worked that thing, and it was amazing. And, you know, he's even prepared himself for my next invite. He said, whenever we want to do this again, I want you to prepare for him because I think there's great potential for Eve even to get involved because she needs to hear about some of these things. She has a wonderful stage that she's on to articulate, from women veterans. But Mr. Wilch, her stepdad, when he was able to present those wonderful models for that show, everything went well except for my moderating. I had no idea what I was doing. And what I do remember, you were trying to guide me, while I was doing all those other things. But there was a lot going on that day. We were in a 6-hour event. And when I was at that podium, I had no idea that people were there who literally wanted to get to the mic. They really wanted to tell their stories. And so in between, that's what was happening at the podium when I was stalling so long and in between the models, because these individuals that were there were wanting to tell about, if you remember the woman there with the foot surgeries and there with the one with the lung cancer. And, I could not allow those legislators who were there, remember the senators were there and the governor's officers was there. And I could not allow them to leave without hearing those stories. That was one of the things that was motivating me behind that microphone. And I could see you so frustrated with me with not letting the models just come through, because you should have been doing that. You are the expert. And I think that in the future, do not put the microphone in my hand. Besides being extremely long-winded, I had no idea what I was doing. And I think I had cue cards of what the outfits were, but certainly to make it flow and to give that eloquence that you would do as a model on imaging and, fashion. It will be something that I would relegate to your expertise in the future. Hopefully we'll be doing another one, and this virus will not linger. But in the future, I want you to just take full control over that. As we were just talking about that before this virus caused the quarantine in Philadelphia, about this year being a good way to bring this back out. So I want you to keep that in mind, that we have not forgotten the great work that you've done, the modeling that you've done, and how you use it as a platform to help. Because we did have homeless veterans that we had dressed that year. We had presented them with baskets that year. That was a really, really very, I'm going to say, trailblazing platform that we put together. There were veterans there who had not had a platform before, and we had not seen that before. And I think there was a lot of things first that we did in Philadelphia that we are now seeing examples all across the country. Whether it was the women veterans speak, we did the church services, or whatever we were doing in Philadelphia. I know that we were doing things that we were not accustomed with, the round tables and with the mayor and some of our legislators. We had done that type of work in Philadelphia, and the kind of things that we were contributing towards, I think is very foundational to where we are today with the broader conversation. We never stopped, being able to invite the governor's office there, or whoever was represented in our platforms. I think that they did not fall on deaf ears. So where did we go from there? The fashion shows are great because it brought in the women veterans. We were able to give them makeovers and give them baskets, and you had clothes that you were giving out. And thank you for never hesitating to say, Kathy, I got your back, or I'm going to help you. But you are isolated in your abilities to do these things. You can do these things all on your own. But when we join forces, magic happens. You must agree to that. And, even last year with the parade and the other events, thank you so much for your contribution to helping to orchestrate the parade demonstration, the exhibits last year. And that wasn't, matter of fact, it was this year, it's March. So, no, it was November, the Veterans Day Parade. So the Veterans Day Parade, where we actually had the tent out, and you helped, and stayed the entire day. I appreciate that, but it was magical. The one thing that I want to draw to your attention is that the challenge that I had in getting those other women veterans, I had to literally go and seek authority to get those women veterans because they were being denied information that I had brought them from Washington, D.C. And these are the kind of things that make it important for us to continue to push, because these women veterans need this information. And when we're able to, whether it's a fashion show, a clothing giveaway, a food giveaway, which, another time when we met, unfortunately, James Abrams has passed on, but that was another forum that we're missing now, And we have to continue to grow and recreate these forums because you were participants in all of those. And it was important because they were doing great work with what they were doing. But we have to cross those different boundaries and push forward and and bring those women out. And I think that's what we've been doing with the fashion shows and the other types of, and the food is certainly always good, right? And one of the things I pride myself in that we do, we never charge anybody anything. Everything is always free. We never, ever ask anybody for nothing. You just show up and everything that you will need will be there. And this is the kind of thing that I hope will resonate throughout all the country of these veterans, because that is key. You know, back before veterans were able to understand that they qualified for 100% or this benefit or that benefit, there were a lot of homeless veterans out here. They did not know that they were suffering in silence, and that their depression, you know, that would not allow them to go to work, actually was a platform for them to advocate for them to get benefits from the VA, you know. So now that this is more a recognized agenda, there are still other needs. There are still other needs out there. There are still other veterans out there that need to get clothing, you know. So we have a lot of clothes, right, Antonia?
Yes.
We have a lot of clothes, and we have a lot of opportunities. And last year when we were out, you know, you set up with the movie theaters, you know, to do, it was a Harriet Tubman movie that came out last year. You set that up for us. And then you set up the these at the Barbers Hall, where we were able to get in there and get access, you know, and our food was discounted. These are the kind of things that you have done, just with being involved on helping other people, but the work that you continue to do, I congratulate you for your effort, always being about the community, always being about the veterans, no matter what it takes, being a buddy to me when I needed your support on my private and more personal health issues. You were there for me. So I thank you. I'm grateful to you, and I'm really hoping that everything that you desire is granted to you for all of the hard work that you do as an advocate. You are not isolated in seeking those benefits for your son. I'm certainly always considering the need, you know, for single parents. And this is a huge part of my conversation. Single parents, dependents of children who are combat wounded, combat victims to suicide and homelessness. What about the children? And this is the conversation that they don't talk about. Okay, so I'm going to continue to keep little Jeremiah, you know, at the helm of my conversation. There are so many things, Ms. Batts, and certainly your work has preceded you in terms of what you deserve to have happen, you know, on this as the woman veteran advocate, and certainly all the talents that you have. I pray that the opportunity for that we can work together. Oh, let me tell you something, because you're too humble. You won't tell it. Okay, you won't tell it like I tell it. I always tell you, you won't tell it like I tell it.
No, you're the best for that.
Yes, I know. You're never going to say anything, but I will, because I know who you are. I've known you for many years, and consistently you have contributed to these very complex platforms, showing up on advocacy, Liberty Resources, where we were there, Seek Atlanta platform for getting minority contracts in the construction industry. You know, we were connected to just laying a foundation on so many levels for apprenticeship programs, internships. We were the contributors on those platforms that now are national issues. These are legislative platforms that benefit veterans across this country, and you have contributed in a way that you are not just a voice, but I think that you are very pivotal for transitioning across generations of veterans from the Gulf War era, which you and I both share, but the Iraq and these Afghanistan veterans have you and the work that you've done to be grateful, because they do not understand. They don't see the faces of those who are behind the scenes, but I would like to just draw attention to your work, recognizing the need to show up and be there at the VA hospital when they have the open houses. You're present there to bring the message and to share with other veterans as to what's going on, being a part of these various communities of support and these systems where they're trying to understand how to help us. You are there speaking on our behalf and sharing on the radio. This is amazing. You are doing a lot of work that nobody talks about, but I will tell it because I think it's important that they know that there are not no one voice out here that has all of the answers. There are a lot of little voices crying out that must come together throughout the country, and certainly your voice should be one of those that is recognized. So I just want to pay tribute and just document some of the history that I know that you have done and contributing toward women veterans across this country, because every little bit counts, Ms. Batts. Comrade, sister, friend. And for that, I'm just grateful to you. I know that we have been on this program, but I'd like for you to just talk about where you would like to go with your work and how we conclude. Just tell us how we can find you on your radio program or what your next agenda is. Just take about 5 minutes and wind it up, and then we're going to just end our program up for today. Just being very grateful with Ms. Jillian Bullock, who has presented about her movie. Certainly there was many dimensions to it that we must dissect. She shared in areas which I was not familiar. She's a forensic psychologist and just goes on the martial art and the therapy and the healing, and certainly in the movie all of these different roles are depicted in the characters. And you will be able to understand it better when you see the movie, exactly what she was speaking about when she talked about the violence from the commander and how she portrayed the wife who actually was not a military person, but yet she perceived his acts of violence as one that was trauma from his military experience. So I want to make sure that conversation stays, part of the reality when you're talking about traumatized victims traumatizing people. Okay, so there is a huge part of the conversation that is missing when we omit, the trauma that the victims themselves have experienced. Please take 5 minutes. Talk about where you're going with your work today and what are you doing and how can we stay connected with you. And certainly you're welcome to come back on this program, Women Veterans Speak. Hopefully you become one of our hosts here. I'd love to have you join us and take in us you're such an articulate commentator that I hope that you will take on some of the role here at Women Veterans Speak so that I can move on into other areas of advocacy. And I hope you'll leave that open. Don't answer right now because I don't want you to commit right now. I want you to think about it and make sure that you're not overloading your plate. But certainly I want this to be a platform that your commentary and expert broadcasting will be welcomed here. And certainly your topics of interest that you have brought from the other platform would be certainly a warm and a refreshing piece of information that is needed. And we certainly could use a strong articulator like you on this platform. It's your next 5 minutes, Ms. Batson. Please, by all means, share what it is that you'd like to share about yourself, where you're going, and your agenda that you have planned, anything that you would like for us to know.
My goodness gracious. Well, Kathy, I can say I couldn't have said it any better of what you have offered, to share with me about, the young lady who had the movie and that she'll be putting out there. I have to admit, she has one of many stories, but hers has been more in-depth than I have ever heard. But I've heard tidbits and pieces of things surrounding her particular issue involved with her film that she's producing. Nevertheless, also, well, I'll start with you, Kathy. That day of that show, I will say 6 hours was very, very long. And I have to admit, my mother, I don't even know how she held up, but she did, and as a result, but it was a labor of love, and she supported us. And not only that, I'll tell you that only for the reason, I'm sure anybody who was like pretty much up in age, at the time, had gotten out there and beat the cement and worked, jobs that were very, very much laborious like she had. It was really a challenge for her to sit there for 6 hours, plus the waiting time prior to that. But we hope to do business with Eve because one thing I like about Eve, when she came on the show called The Talk, not only was she still lovely, but she was still an improved piece that I have got a chance to see her evolve into, and I really admire Eve for being able to blend in so well with the other women. It was an issue of age, it was an issue of color, and everything just transcended so nicely until I caught myself watching the show when I could a little more because of her inclusion. So yes, her father, I believe her stepfather, Ron. Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, he did provide us a wonderful model male model, and the clothing, I have to admit, they were very, very handsomely designed. I loved it. And the woman that I happened to meet in time enough, a week before, as a matter of fact, to bring in all the clothing she had for us to present, as well as whatever we had to offer out of our wardrobe, it worked out very well. The purpose of the fashion show, part of it, being included in your platform, was the fact it could break up the repetition. See, when you get up on a stage and talk about political things, you talk about things that it can put a person to sleep sometimes. So as a result, some people seeing something like a fashion show or a very whimsical production, which isn't overly long and drawn out, it can break up that repetition and monotony. And as a result, yes, it wasn't intended for something for involving a political constituent platform to be represented, to have something like a fashion show included. I can say whether it was my show or anyone else's, it would have woke me up, kept me awake during the whole event. So anyway, to bring it up to date, where I would like to go with actually things I have done and things I plan on doing to consolidate my efforts. And, well, I would like to obviously, get in a paid position. So as I said, I would like to be able to move forward with getting my offspring back into college, because I believe that he may follow a bit of the footsteps, intentions that I've started, which was not intended for him to include himself, but I was proud to see that he had including himself in being a consultant, a quasi-consultant to what I do in broadcasting by lending an ear from a young adult perspective that's on the cusp of him being an iGen by age and a millennial, mid-20s exactly. And as a result, I said, you know what? I said, I'll take that in consideration. Some things, you just don't close your ears on other people. You don't put faith in iGens and millennials, or early millennials, because if you do, then you may catch yourself discounting things that are pertinent that other people have to say that have been here for a while. So, I don't put nobody out the pasture, but then again, I don't allow the youth to overtake things when they're not seasoned veterans and understanding people over the years. There are times when I have been challenged by him a little verbally about some issues where I would let him understand, yes, I'll take into consideration what you have to say. But remember, I've been out here, okay? I'm a foot soldier, so to speak, when it comes to public relations. So we're going to see how we can make this whole thing work itself out. So I respect that. But anyway, so I do need to get a paid position, yes, let it be said. I love my veterans. They are a priority in one of the higher schemes of things. But after all, if I'm going to spend many years in school and out there in the field doing other things, of course, if you would like to see something done on a larger scale, well, take me seriously and realize that I need to move forward as well. I can't remain stagnant and just do everything only because I let my self just allow to be stagnated by volunteerism or whatever else. Oh, yes, I did one time model in New York back in, I think, maybe 2000, somewhere in the early teens, with a woman by the name of Catherine Schuler, called Real Way to Runway. For a moment, it was just basic attire that for jogging purposes. I forgot all of the different manufacturers she featured, and it was nice to be down there on Broadway Avenue in a high-end hotel, and people who came from all over the United States to bring even their kids in some of the venues she had even after that. But I'm glad I was caught in that because I didn't feel as though that I was comfortable within the curvy model, thing that if they saw me featured in something, in jogging wear, for example, like I had that one time, at least it will show that women of all ages who rely on attire like that to be able to lose weight, go about their daily routine, whatever. It worked out so fine for the reason that it presented them, and even the young ladies were there, and the young men. So, nevertheless, about myself, it would be nice to be able to remain in the fashion industry, take it further in the way of not only consulting, but also presenting people who have a design capacity. But don't forget to reach back to me, because I'll be the very one that you'll probably wish that you stayed in touch. That's only my one piece of advice. Kathy, you presented yourself very well.
I have my hooks in you, my sister.
I'm
you
sorry.
go nowhere. And I will tell you that collaborations are developing, and certainly you are that, and particularly opportunities that would provide for you the kind of quality environment, and certainly that equates into the kind of support and compensation that you deserve. But I will tell you that this program has been more enlightening than I thought. I tell you, I'm just delighted that you and I can connect on this level. Ms. Bullock, of course, was the featured guest in the first segment of the program, and she has provided me so much information. I was trying to streamline it to the movie, but certainly she covered a lot more than I expected because she is so full of the experience components for the advocacy, and the whole women veterans experience is all encompassed in her work. You talked about the homelessness, and she talked about, being raped as a 10-year-old and how she's transitioned and used those experiences as tools for life. Being a martial art expert and certainly doing the film. When you watch the film, it's going to be amazing when you view it to see the level of quality that she has just projected in her work. And certainly she's a published author and has, I think, at least 2 books or maybe 3 books. But certainly she has a plethora of works that are commendable. And we must continue to grow this particular platform and not feel isolated in our work. I have my own agenda. It's not radio per se. This is just part of what my agenda is. But I have other, ideas for myself as far as what I believe to be my calling or my destiny. And it's a multi-dimensional, approach to how we are capable of fulfilling all of these things as veterans. We have been trained, and it's certainly not to somewhat be a little bit more complacent or lackadaisical about our lives. We are being, I think, very active, and I think that's important for us to move past our circumstances. So I want to thank you for joining us on our program. I certainly am hoping that you will have the time to contribute, host, co-host, maybe in the future, and just put your expertise before the people so that we can hear from your trained commentary. And we can focus in on some of the things that you find to be important, some of the topics that you have been talking about for the past 2 years on your show, the parameter. Is it parameter, right?
Peripheral vision.
Peripheral vision.
Actually, it's peripheral vision.
The parameters and other. So peripheral vision. We want to make sure peripheral vision becomes a name, a household name. Peripheral vision. That's like check my 6. Okay. Oh, I understand what it means.
That's okay.
So I want to. Yes, exactly. So I want to make sure that the audience. Peripheral vision. Antonio Bass is a wonderful commentator, reporter. Doing great radio, history, with modeling, and a lot of public imaging that is necessary to show that we can survive. And this is what survival looks like. And we are always reaching towards that goal. We're always looking to set that standard. There's a female we are going to have, Jackie Baum. We're looking to have her on our program. She was going through for the past 2 years fighting a situation in the VA hospital, and she won her case, and she put the case on Facebook. I said, you've got to come on the show. But every day she's putting on Facebook her growth, her healing, the food that she's eating, the turmeric, and she's talking about the vegetables and the nuts. And every day she's becoming more flushed and more real. The fight is draining. The fight is draining, but she celebrated it, and I told her I'm celebrating with you when I bring her on our show, and I hope that you'll be a part of this conversation to help me to just kind of really focus on the things that are important, because my perspectives are so broad. You really do help to hone things in because you're a lot more focused in your commentary than I am at these days. But certainly that. Thank you. I hope your mother is well, your son. We will continue to stay in touch, and this COVID-19, it shall pass, and we will get back on the stage again together. And I hope that you will just put together the ideas for that upcoming show. Can we do a Zoom fashion show? Can we do that? I think we can. I think that we can create walkways in our homes, and we can do a Zoom show. Think about that, and let's talk about how we can collaborate. Certainly, all of the things that are in place must be utilized to our advantage, and we are not going to become complacent and allow anything to stop us. And certainly, this virus is not going to stop us, but we're going to use it as a tool to continue to expound on the work that we've done over the past couple of decades. And I thank you again. I'm going to wind up our show. I have a few comments I'd like to make. But again, thank you. I pray that Philadelphia will continue to address its issues, and all of the major cities are conforming to the social distancing practices that we can mitigate this challenge that we all faced. So we are going to be winding up our show. This is Kathy Santos, host, Women Veterans Speak, here in the DMV. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for the opportunity to share in this platform. Jillian Bullock, Sense of Purpose, thank you so much for delivering and putting a face on the big screen of those of us who are suffering in silence. Thank you, Jillian Bullock, for compassing the experience in a way that makes it artful, culturally sensitive to those of us who are affected by this dilemma. So we are signing off today, Saturday, with a very fulfilling experience and discussions on important topics by those who are in the trenches contributing on these very complex issues. Despite the level of the contribution, all is important. All roads lead home. All of it is important. And I thank you for being a part of this Women Veterans Speak platform. To all of those listeners out there, please join us again on next Saturday, where we will be talking with Jackie Baum, who defeated a situation that she was confronted within the VA hospital, taking the reins into her own hands. She won her case, and having a social worker who had disrespected her and violated her in such a way that she fought through the civilian courts and had the person's license revoked, actually, and the person certainly is no longer working within the VA system. We will be talking with her next Saturday. Join us for Women Veterans Speak. Again, this is your host, Kathy Santos. Please have a wonderful rest of the Saturday evening, and we'll see you back here again on next week. That was hard.